Awesome. Hey, right on, Chris. Thank you for the invite. Hello, family. My name is Alika, and I'm a super grateful member of Alcoholics Anonymous. My sobriety date, my separation date is November 5th, 2019. Something must have been in the waters in 2019. I see brother Sean, yeah, got sober in 19 as well. David, he said 98, you got sober. 98 is when I graduated, man. There's no graduate in this program. I see the Hawaiian flag behind you, brother. I love it. I want to welcome Rana, brother Rana, with 20 days, Sister Michelle with 42 days, um, and a few of my friends I see up there, Sister Jolene and Auntie Deb S. And man, what a privilege and an honor to be asked to share in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Um, Towards the end of my drinking career, as they say, right, I was that lone wolf, that unlovely creature that a book talks about, this all-time loser, right? Scorecard red zero, all-time loser, right? I've always wanted to go to the ATL. I have fun with these things, and you know what? The ID to this meeting, you guys talk about a spiritual life. Everything is spiritual. Good and bad. Everything is spiritual. I just made a bad decision and it was spiritual, you know? And I'm not gonna get into that, but that's what happens, right? All pain get purpose today, and if my antennas are alert, right? Then I can see that. And sometimes we make decisions, right? Like a book says, based on self, which later put us in a position to be hurt. And but there's a solution, right? And I cannot think about the solution, right? I gotta live the solution, right? I gotta walk my talk. I gotta live this way of life, right? So get in it, get in there, right? Pause, agitated and doubtful, right? Clean it up, right? Discuss it with somebody, right? Turn my thoughts to someone they can help, right? And watch this thing. This is a lifetime practice for me, and it wasn't like that when I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And getting back to you guys ID, right? When I'm looking at the ID, I see page 88. I see page 44. I see page 4. I see page I believe 62, right? That's the death page. And then I see page 16, right? And page 16, I'm going to read from that because it says here, on page 16, and this is the end of Bill's story. So I was taught, right? We read the doctor's opinion, right? We take them statements, turn them into questions, right? I'm a parlors of alcohol. Has my life become unmanageable? Yep, that's true for me. Have I been the moderate drinker, the hard drinker? Um, the real alcoholic. Yep, that's all true for me. And we get into Bill's story, right? And we take these do I another one in the doctor's opinion, right? Men and drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol, right? Is that me? Oh, big time, right? Here we go. Recovery. I stay recovered because I like the effect produced by recovery. What it has done for me. Oh yes. To live a life beyond my wildest dreams. I've been rocking into the fourth dimension. What is the fourth dimension? Bill talks about it in his story, right? I was to know happiness, usefulness in a way of life that gets incredibly and wonderfully better as time passes, right? That's the triangle right there, right? Happiness, right? That's recovery, right? Usefulness is service, right? A way of life. Happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly and wonderfully better as time passes, and that's our triangle, So here we go on page 16, right? An alcoholic in his cups is an unlovely creature. Our struggles with them are various, strenuous, and tragic, right? Various is hard to hear at times, right? Strenuous, there is things are tough to hear, guys. Sometimes you gotta let other people write their story. You cannot chase nobody down. You know what I mean? I can show you what I've done, right? I can tell you the course of action and the plan of action that I took but I'm not gonna waste my time chasing you down, bro. Cause get somebody else's life that I gotta save. You know what I mean? It's trending. It's comic, right? Our stories are funny, right? We're a bunch of storytellers, man. It tells us in the beginning of the book, right? Over over 1,000 of men who have recovered, right, from a seemingly hopeless up in mind and body, right? These are stories, you know, and tragic, right? And Bill talks about it, right? One poor chap committed suicide in my home. I remember stumbling into my first meeting, maybe it was like the 12th meeting, right, of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't. I was in a fog, man. I just gotten out of a coma. Was not a vision for you, and was over at the Alana Club here in Lahaina, and my body was telling me I never know I had this gift of desperation. I never know that I was stepping into grace. I never know I was walking into a way of life. I never know that I was gonna be walking into a promised land. You know, my buddy says, right? I never know that we was gonna be walking to the land of milk and honey. You know, it's just gets it's better. You know, it just tastes good now today, right? It tastes good though. Everything tastes good. Everything looks good, right? I get spiritual eyes today. I get spiritual ears today. You know, and I did not know that. I never know I was stepping into a design for living, right? A level of life, right? All this stuff, you know. Um, and I remember it was like my 11th or 12th day in. This was a huge turning point for me. Nobody would tell me, Alika, show up to the meeting 15 minutes early, stay 15 minutes late. He would say, participate in your recovery, right? Get involved. You know, and I had nothing else left to do, right? AA was the last house on the block for me. You know, I exhausted all measures. I was broken. I was a shell of a human being at the time. Um, like, like, we'll get into it later, but stumbling into that room, I was in the walker, and I seen everybody weeping and crying. And I asked one of the members, I said, hey, what's going on? She said, oh, Alika, we just been caught one guy down from the tree. And I said, what? She said, yeah, we just been caught one guy down from the tree. I remember stumbling back to my truck in my walker. I called my Abby. I called Kala, right? I called my Abby Thatcher. Another thing, when you read Bill's story, who's your Abby Thatcher, right? Do I drink like Bill? Do I think like Bill? Do I feel like Bill ultimately, right? When you read the story, those are the three questions, right? And I called Kala, called my Abby, and I said, brother, you seen caught one guy down from the tree. He said, yeah, Luke, that's exactly what happens. You start right where you left off, and some people never make it back. He said, where did you leave off? And all I could think about was being in the hospital, shedding all over myself. Being lucky to be alive, you know. I thoroughly believe that God had woken me up from that coma, graced me, had mercy on my life, graced me with the rules of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you folks, right, spoke life into me, gave me hope, right, and showed me a way up and a way out. It showed me through your experience that I could live a life beyond my wildest dreams. And I'm here to say that that has happened for me. You know, I was hit, I started drinking when I was 10 years old. I was a football, baseball guy, uh, quarterback, pitcher. Everything with a ball is what I did. And then at the end of my run, I had balls in my pocket, right? The white witch that goes up your nose, and you know, I burned it and turned it, right? I was that roaring tornado that the book talks about, right? Ripping and roaring through people's life. The Jekyll and Hyde, right? Making all these broken promises, um, and it was fun, right? It was fun until it wasn't, right? It was fun until it wasn't, and I was on a 20-year run, like Bill. I love Bill, man. I love Uncle Bob. I love these guys, man. And Bill tells my story, right? He said like a boomerang, right? I forged a weapon that would one day boomerang and cut me into ribbons, right? That was my disease. That was alcoholism, right? Today, I like to say, I forge a shield, right? That will sustain me, that will empower me, right? This power of God that will sustain me, empower me, equip me, strengthen me, right? To go through life, to get through life, to sidestep the booby traps, right? To not get too much involved in emotional entanglements, the acid tests of life they talk about, right? Can I stay sober, keep an emotional balance, and live to good purpose under all conditions? All conditions, no matter what may be going on, right? Job or no job, wife or no wife, partner or no partner, relationship. This is not relationship recovery. This is not fitness recovery, right? This is not retail recovery. This is Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a way of life, right? And right, Lahaina town burning down. You know what I mean? Like death in the family. All this strange stuff we can go through today and stay sober. Who would have thought, right? Who would have thought? And before I was the guy at the funeral, right? I mean, I show up early. I drink the whole time at the funeral, right? I drink on the job. That's just what I do. I drink. I'm a drinker. I used to say I was an organized drinker. And today I like to say I'm an organized alcoholic. I'm an organized alcoholic in recovery, right? Who has recovered and who stays recovered, right? By practicing these principles, right? Living these traditions and these principles and making it a way of life. It becomes a lifestyle. The book tells us it becomes a working part of the mind, right? I believe you work the steps start to work you, right? It becomes embedded in you, right? And how does that happen, right? I gotta start to identify myself with this book, right? I gotta see myself in this book, right? And then when I start to read the book, I start to see it as a book of mirrors, right? These things are penetrating my heart. It was me, selfish and self-centered. It was me, right? The bedevilments, right? Being haunted by all this stuff, right? And right, if my arrangements will only stay put, well, right, and and towards the end, it wasn't like that, all the walls came closing in on September 24th, 2019, right? I like to say the worst, best day ever now, and lucky thing God had mercy on me and saved my life. And but when my eyes opened up, it was October 3rd, 2019, right? When the first words came out of my mouth on October 5th, 2019, right? The first words I said was, "Where's my beer? Where's my beer?" It's like I had a impure spirit in me, and this demonic spirit, and I didn't really come to, right. I never did wake up. Yeah, I understand today. I never did wake up. I only came to, right. I never did how you say, go sleep, right. I've always passed out, and today I get to do that, right. I get to wake up having had a spiritual awakening, right. I get to go to sleep, get some good rest, um wake up with my son this morning. I'm looking at the mountain. I'm looking at Haleakala. It's a fresh, brand new day. It's a new life, right? A new spiritual life, right? And all found through the runes of Alcoholics Anonymous. And was up, like I said, it was about the October 11th. They told me what had happened, right? Um, he said, "You're lucky to be alive," you know. And I was in chains. I was the guy in the hospital bed, right? Handcuffed to the bed. Um, my I got into a big altercation at Honolulu International Airport, right? It said ex corrections officer goes on rampage at Honolulu International Airport, right? You can look it up. Ex Maui corrections officer goes on rampage at Honolulu International Airport, and I lose them. I was in one of them blackouts that we're all in, right? I've been drinking since I was 10 years old. I've always been blacking out. I operate on blackout. I can still operate on blackout today. If I'm not working this way of life, if I'm not living by these spiritual principles, right? I like my friend. He says, just because your eyes are open, doesn't mean that you're awake. So I get to wake up to this stuff. I get to wake up to this stuff, man, and I'm so grateful. I wake up grateful and walk with gratitude. And Alcoholics Anonymous has done wonders for me. And so when I came out of that coma, and God brought me out of that coma, he sent me to this place called the Rehab Hospital of the Pacific. I had to undergo speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy, right? Intensive stuff, and everything was broken, right? Things are coming out of every orbital. I was being spoon fed. I remember I was eating applesauce for like 3 weeks already, you know. And by the time they released me, right, they told me, we cannot hold you any longer because you've been progressing well, right? We need bed space for other people. They sent me home to my mom's house, right? I'm a guy who was born and raised in a small town called Kahaluu, and there we had 4 traffic lights, right? We played in the river, we rode bike everywhere, we played in the mud, we played in the rain, and being at home back in mom's house in the fetal position, shedding all over myself, just like this all-time loser, right? This unlovely creature that our book talks about, right? This guy who was a shell of a human being, and I didn't know what was happening. I thought everything was okay. That's the insanity of this stuff, right? I couldn't wait to start drinking again, right? And like Bill says on our Mrs. Day, right? He went back to drinking, right? Stumbled, trembling. He stumbled from the hospital, right? That's me. Trembling, I stumbled from the hospital on our Mrs. Day. Same thing here in Hawaii is that on Mrs. Day. I believe is Veterans Day, right? Here in Hawaii was on luau, right? My cousin called me. He said, "Yeah, like we go to a luau." A luau is like a big celebration, a party. Usually it's for a 1-year-old birthday or for someone that has graduated, right? And it was my nephew's first baby luau, right? My cousin took me to that luau, and I was off to the races again. You know, I just came out the hospital, being lucky to be alive, and I'm off to the races again. I don't know I got a problem, right? I don't know that my life has become a magical. I mean, I actually kind of know, but I don't want to admit it, right? I don't want to get honest. I don't want to admit it, right? But and at the same time, right? When somebody would say, Alika, you drinking too much, I'd be like, what you talking about? That's what we do. It's what we do here in Hawaii. It's what we do all over the world. We drink. What you mean I'm drinking too much? I mean, you're offending me, right? I don't know any other way. I don't know any other way. I've been raised to that. I had sponsors my whole life. I've always wanted to be like the other guys. I always wanted to be like my aunties and my uncles and people that were doing this deal. Even though they had the fights and whatnot and the obscene things that had happened, right? Uh, um, what he says, while they admit it is injurious, they cannot differentiate the truth from the false. You know, and my drinking assumed more proportions. And it was just wild. And I did not know. Right, I did not know. When guys would tell me that, I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna slow down a little bit then. Okay, but I found that every time I try to control it, I can't enjoy it, and every time I try to enjoy it, I'm out of control. I'm out of control. So at my mom's house in the fetal position, I remember just arguing with her. She's telling me, like, you're not even a father anymore. At that time I had a 3-year-old son. Of course, I told his mom, I'm gonna change my life. I'm gonna try to slow down. I'm not gonna drink as much, and all that was broken promises, right? Always building up the structure and pulling them down. And at the end of my run, I remember I was out of the house already. There was TROs and all this kind of stuff. There was supervised visits and all this kind of stuff. And I found myself at my mom's house, and I was arguing with her, and she was like, you know what, this and that. Basically, she's telling me the truth, and I didn't want to hear it. You know. So I told her to drop me off at the park, and I went to a park, and this park where I grew up, and I played football, baseball, and I was stumbling around this park. Like I said, everything is spiritual, right? But I cannot see it then, right? I cannot see what I cannot see. I cannot hear what I cannot hear because I don't want to hear it, and I don't want to see it. And even if I see it, it's not real to me, right? I don't see it as a mirror. I don't see it as anything spiritual, right? I don't even see it as a sign that maybe I should stop, right? And that's the insanity of that stuff, right? And I see one of my uncles, right? And he's in his cups, right? He's that unlovely creature, just like me, right? And and he has the brown bag, and he's the guy in the park, right? And that's how it ended up for me, right? I was the park rat at the end. It was a mirror for me, right? And I remember stumbling around that park. I was in my walker, and I felt the ua, which we call rain here in Hawaii, right? I felt God showering His blessings all over me, right? I've always kind of been a spiritual guy. I've always believed in the power of God, right? I never did develop a relationship with Him, though, right? I've always called on Him like the bush league pinch hitter. I remember going to church. I remember being the altar boy because I only wanted to drink wine. I wanted to drink the wine first. It's like crazy I am. I remember going to Bible studies on Wednesdays because I like see the girls. You know what I mean? Going to retreats because I like act cool. Like just just. But you know what? In all that, yeah, in all that, there was a type of seeking. There was a type of seeking. There was a type of emptiness in me that I was always trying to fill. Right, and I see that now that alcohol and addiction and other stuff was the stuff that was trying to fill that stuff. And it would only be for a second though, right? It'd only be for a moment, right? It wouldn't last. And now what this program has done for me has allowed me to tap into an unsuspected inner resource, right? This life of limitless expansion, right? This manner of living, right? This spiritual life, right? And and today I'm full, right? I'm in union with this power, right? I have how you say it? I have gone through some stuff, right? That has made me the best version of myself. We don't know that at that time. We don't know that the dark past is the greatest possession that we have. I don't know that. So it was on November 4th, 2019. I stumbled around this park, same thing again, right? Just like Groundhog Day. I argue with my mom, drop me off the park again. It's November 5th, 2019. I see my uncle, the rain falling down on me again, right? And I cry out to this God, right? And I'm like, why me? Why me? Why me? And I feel his rain showering blessings over me, right? I feel the wolf showering blessings over me. I look at my uncle, I see my uncle again, right? And then I hear this voice, right? It says, son, if you don't change this life, if you don't change your life, that's gonna be you. And I'm like, I'm stumbling around the park, same thing. Right. Later on that afternoon, I'm at another park, right? I'm watching my nephews play flag football, right? They're throwing the ball around, they're having fun, they're laughing, right? All the things that I could do, right? And at that time, I was broken. I could not do nothing, right? I couldn't hold on ball, I couldn't even turn on penny on the table. I couldn't play cards, I couldn't do that, I couldn't hold nothing, and um from a guy that was the above average athlete in his town to one guy that was just a total loser, And I remember that afternoon while being at the park, my friend calls my phone, right? Like Bill's story, right? My musing was interrupted by a cheery voice of an old school friend, right? This guy calls my phone. I hear him over the phone, right? I was like, I know this voice, right? And he tells me, "Oh, Alika, bro, I heard what happened to you, this and that." And where you stay? He's like, I'm come over, I'm come by. And I stay at Kanyeohe Playground, right? So this guy comes. I never know this guy is doing 12-step work, right? I never know this guy coming from like Waimanalo, which is like 20 minutes away, 30 minutes away. He's coming all the way to where I'm at, right? And when this guy came out the truck, right? He stood there, just like Bill's story, right? Fresh skin and glowing, right? He was more inwardly reorganized. He was on new footing. His roots grasped new soil. This guy was carrying on mess to me without even saying nothing. All he did was get out of the truck. I never know what was going on. I never know nothing about attraction and promotion. I never know that, you know? And that's what we get to do today, right? That's what I get to do when we make the approach, when we show up others, right? It's by my demonstration, right? The book tells a much more important demonstration of these principles lies within our respective homes, occupations, and affairs, right? From the guy who was the page 18 guy, yeah, an illness of this sort, right? It says, it engulfs all whose lives touch the sufferers. Everybody that cared about me all my friends, all the co-workers, right? It brings fierce resentment. What the stuff saying, right? Annihilation of all things possible, bring fierce resentment, disgusted friends, warped lives of blameless children, sad parents, right? All this stuff. And he says anybody can increase to live. That's what has happened. But directly across that page, on page 19, it talks about much elimination of our drinking is but a beginning. Much more demonstration of these principles lies within our respective homes, occupation, and affairs. Right? That's what I do. That's how I behave. That's how I act. That's how I'm love, patience, kindness, tolerance. Right? How am I reacting, responding? Right? Am I walking my talk? Right? Am I carrying this message? Am I that guy out there contributing to the community or still causing chaos in the community? You know that I am the guy that is lifting people up, right? Or breaking them down with my tongue. You know what I mean? And that has happened for me. This transformation, this transfiguration has happened because of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I did not know. So my buddy shows up at this park and he looks at me and he oh shucks, almost 12:40 already. He looks at me and he hugs me. He said, "Bro, so I never see you so long, and this and that." And then he says, "Oh, so I was like, so what we gonna do now? I thought we was gonna party. I thought we were gonna party, man. And he said, "Oh, come, we'll go eat." And he takes us to this place to eat, and he's showing me these pictures of his family and stuff like that. And the last time I seen him, right, because I was a prison guard, right, I seen this guy in a jumpsuit. I seen this guy in oranges. You know what I mean? I seen all my knucklehead friends. I was looking for all my knucklehead friends because I had the authority. I thought, you know what I mean? And I would look for all my knucklehead friends and type in their name in the CJ system, and I would see them, right? And I saw this guy, right? Now I see him at the park. And like I said, he was more inwardly reorganized, right? This guy was glowing, man. And he takes me to go eat. And then after that, I'm like, hey, so what we do now? He's like, oh, I got to go to a meeting. What you talking about? Look at me. He said, oh, an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. I said, what? He said, yeah. I said, what? Alina, I said, what? He said, yeah, I've been doing this for over 3 years now. He said, I'm softly like, when people talk softly, listen, huh? He said, yeah, I've been doing this for over 3 years now. And I said, what? He said, why, you let go? And I said, yeah, bro, we go. I was done, man. I was done. Like the book said, Bill's story, right? I was cornered at last. I who thought so well of myself, my abilities, my capacities to surmount obstacles was cornered at last. You know what I mean? No words can tell the loneliness and despair I found in that bitter morass of self-pity. Yeah, quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master. I felt like that. You know what I mean? I drank like Bill. I felt like Bill. I thought like Bill. And that's step one, right? To the own self be true, right? Admitting and accepting that I got a problem, right? It says in the 12 and 12, right? Upon no good will come to any area unless he can first admit and accept his devastating weaknesses and all of his consequences. Until he so humbles himself, his sobriety, if anything, will be precarious, gonna be on the rocks. Of real happiness, he will find none at all, right? And I did that, and I never know I was taking step one. I never know I was doing step one. I never know I had this gift of desperation, right? I never know that I was by surrounding myself with this group of drunks that following this good orderly direction. That these guys are showing me one power, right? They was directing me into one power, And I remember stumbling into that room. Was November 5th, 2019, and you guys just welcoming me, right? There's everybody's clapping and whatnot, and I thought I was on set up, I was like, what's going on? And the guy gets up there, like I'm hearing this guy sharing his story, right? He's a storyteller, sharing his story, right? And I hear this vicious cycle. I start to identify, I start to relate. I'm like, wow, yeah, that was me. And so my buddy tells me, so like tomorrow night, and I'm like, I got nothing else to do. I was like, yeah, sure, come pick me up. So he come pick me up, right? We go to another meeting. At the meeting, they give me this book. They give me this book, right? And I'm like, thinking, wow. They said, hey, this book will save your life. I was like, what? He said, yeah. So my buddy tells me, bro, like you grab the first 164 pages of this book. Open them up. He grabbed that. He said, grab the first 164. He said, these pages going to save your life, bro. And I was like, what? I never know. I said, yeah, right, whatever. So he takes me to the following night. We go to another meeting. Right? Was on Kain. Was in Kailua called Misfits. Right? I was like, I love the names of our meetings. And the next day we go to another meeting. Right? It's like my fifth day. I'm not drinking anymore. I don't know what has happened. I've been separated from alcohol. Yeah. I wasn't trying to get sober. I never ever did want to get sober. My sobriety date is just a date, right? It's a precious date, right? It's a precious date. But, right, that date unlocks the codes in this book. Yeah, will allow you to unlock the codes in this book. You get a bunch of codes that will give you, enable you, and empower you and equip you to give you the keys to the kingdom, man. And that is what has happened to me, you know. And so we get to Saturday meet. I come back, was like 5 days and no drink. Now I'm like, I like see all of a sudden I like be a father again, right? I want to see my son. I said, Mom, I can go back to Maui. I like see my son. She's like, oh son, if you go Maui, promise me you continue to go to these meetings. So I get back to Maui. I was like, yeah, Mom, I promise you right now. Like I said, I broke all the promises earlier. Um, I get back to Maui. My body tells me, Alika, you got to participate in your recovery, right? Show up 15 minutes early, stay 15 minutes late, get involved. I never know, like I said, about this gift of desperation. But I showed up to the Alana Club, right? The Alana Club in Lahaina, and I walk up these steps, right? And as I'm stumbling up these steps in my walker, there's a greeter there, right? And he reaches out in his hand. He said, welcome to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, you too can recover. He said, you too can recover from the seemingly open state of mind and body. He said, you too don't ever have to feel that pain again. And I never know what's going on, but I remember sitting there every day, right? And crying and crying and crying, right? Crying every day, crying, booger nose every day, right? And I tell one of the guys, I say, hey man, how come I keep crying? He said, Alika, you're healing right now, brother. You're healing, bro. And I said, what? He said, yeah, you're healing, bro. He said, one day, those tears are going to be tears of joy, tears of gratitude. And that's what has happened, you know? And so like I talked about the guy committed suicide. I stumbled back to my truck. My buddy laid out the plan of recovery and the program of action to recover, and you start to do the deal. The first step, right? I knew I was powerless over alcohol. I knew my life was totally unmanageable, and I've always believed in God, but I've always called on him in a bush sleep pinch hitter, right? So I started to develop this relationship with him, right? I started to get quiet, right? I started to pray, right? I started to do disciplines, right? Um, and then in step three, so in step one, right? I surrender to this God, right? I surrender to this way of life. I'm done, right? I get surrendered and I'm done, And I made a beginning, right? And it talks about in step three, and I really love this, right? When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things follow. All right, we had a new employer, being all powerful. He provided what we needed if we kept close to him you know and that's the thing, right? I gotta draw near to God, right? I gotta draw near to God. I gotta get aligned with him, right? How do I do that? I gotta sharpen myself with him, right? Page 84 to 88, right? They tell me, right? The step 10 stuff tell me, right? So it activates his faith in me, right? Step four, right, was exposing all the flawed thinking, right? Looking at the causes and conditions, right? Looking at my fears, my resentments, my conduct, all that kind of stuff, and bringing all that kind of stuff to the surface, and dropping the rock, And in step 6 and 7, they talk about this is the steps that separate the men from the boys, right? The girls from the women, right? Looking at those character defects, looking at those shortcomings, right? Looking at how, and my thinking started to change, right? My perspective started to change, right? The 9 step promises talking about a whole attitude and outlook on life was going to change, you know? And things started to change, right? My buddy told me, Alika, first we change our thinking. Then we change our attitude. We change our attitude. We change our actions. We change our actions. We change our behaviors. We change our behaviors. We change our results. And one day at a time, you will become the best version of yourself. And I was like, wow, and I was tripping out. I didn't know. Like I said earlier, right? I never ever want to stop drinking, right? But I've been introduced, right, into a level of life, guys. This thing is amazing, and making it right with others in steps 8 and 9, making that list and looking at them, right, and making those amends, right? Um, telling them I apologize, I'm so sorry for how I have hurt you, how I've harmed you, the things that I've done, and if I left anything unsaid, can you please tell me? Put the ball in their court, right? Can you please tell me, and give them the opportunity for lay whatever they got out on me, and I just sit there and take it, and for the most part, guys, yeah, people already know that we suffering. Most people already know that we got problems. So they're just happy that we're now living in a solution. They're just happy that I'm trying to change my life, And but it warns us not to go into that, right? Without getting quiet, right? Good judgment, a careful sense of time, encouraging prudence. These are the qualities of step nine, and it was like the Red Sea parted, man. You know, Alicia was brought out of Egypt, right, and led to the promised land. This book gave me life, man. And in steps 10, 11, and 12, right, we continue in 10, we improve in 12, and we improve in 11 and practice in 12, right? We vigorously commence to this way of living as we clean up the past. My next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness, right? We enter the world of the spirit, right? My next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness of what? Of an awakened spirit, right? My antennas is working today, right? They tell us, but this is not an overnight matter, right? It should continue for a lifetime. There's no graduate in this program. Yeah, I graduated in '98, right? But I don't graduate this program. You know, I'm a selfish and self-centered guy. I got to work on myself. There's things in me, right? Till today, my actions, my behaviors, the way I talk at times, I can be short, right? I can but I'm much more aware of it today. The tone of my voice, all this kind of stuff. Am I kind, loving, and tolerant of others, right? Am I cutting people down, or building people up? I want to be that guy, right? In step 11, they talk about Bill says in his story, right? If a man fails to perfect, right, that's not to be perfect, right? If a man, that's just to make better, right? If a man fails to perfect and enlarge, make bigger his spiritual life, to work in self-sacrifice with others, right? Working these steps, living these traditions, living these self-sacrifice for others. I gotta give this thing away, man. I gotta help other guys. I gotta show other guys that they too can recover, right? I don't just work with them, but my actions show them, right? My behavior show them. That's why they talk about being an example, being in demonstration. You might be the only walking big book that somebody may see. They don't even know, right? But they see what transformation. The some other people that know how it was before. They see the transformation. They see this guy that's much more inwardly reorganized. They see a guy that's on new footing. How does all that stuff happen? Because of the rules of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because lack of power was my dilemma, right? And I admitted that and led me to a power greater than myself. Right? It showed me that deep down, every man, woman, and child was the fundamental idea of God. This stuff was in me already. Right? What happened was this chink of armor that they're talking about got broken, right? And I started to let the sunlight of the spirit in, you know? And God could and would if you were sought. And they talk about that. Just like read this real quick. I know we get few minutes left, but it talks about this, and this comes from the 12 and 12. Okay. And it's on page 106 and 107. And it says here, when a man or woman has a spiritual awakening, guys, check this out. The most important meaning of it is that he has now become able to do, feel, and believe, which he could not do before on his unaided strength alone. I need God in my life. I need this program in my life. It aligns me, it sustains me, it equips me, it empowers me. You know, he's been granted a gift, right? This gift of desperation, this priceless gift, guys. The rules of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? This way of life needs to be polished, nourished, and expanded. A limitless load, yeah? He's been granted a gift which amounts to a new state of consciousness and being, right? I'm at peace today. I get peace in my life, right? The Bill story, I love Bill's story. I always reference it, right? He says, the doctor, what happened? I don't know. Was something wrong with me? He said, uh, I don't know what happened, but something has happened to you. Something happened, guys. Something has happened to you. Whatever it is, you better hold on to it. That's what the doctor said. Something has happened to me. Something happened. He says, he has been set on a path which tells him he's really going somewhere. That life is not a dead end, not something to be endured or mastered. Right? It's not an overnight matter. It should continue for a lifetime. Right? In a very real sense, he's been transformed, guys. More inwardly reorganized. Transfiguration. It happened. This is the inside job, man. It happens from the inside, right? But inside get to match my outsides today, right? It wasn't like that before, right? Because he has laid hold of a source of strength, the power of this program, how it works, right? How it works. Rarely have we seen a person who has thoroughly followed our path, right? The spiritual path, how it works. What is it, right? When you think about it, look back. What is it? What is it? The program is the power of God, right? It's his way of life. It's his design for living, right? It's this level of life, you know. He says, laid hold of a source of strength in which, one way or another, he has hitherto denied himself, right? Who, I never wanted this, right? Nobody. Even when people come to the room, some people they gotta go and they gotta come back, but they gotta write their story. You know, I never know. Lucky thing for me, I had this gift of desperation. You know, um, so I cannot be blocked. I cannot let my mind be blocked by it. It talks about, right, obstinacy, right, sensitiveness, touchiness. You know, these are the things that block me, right? These are spiritual barriers, right? Um, Tradition, old ideas. This stuff is all the stuff that blocked me. You know, and it says he finds himself in a possession of a degree of honesty, tolerance, and unselfishness, peace of mind, and love, which he has thought himself quite incapable. Right? I wasn't. I never thought about this kind of stuff before. Right? I never thought about thinking of others. Well, maybe I did, but I wasn't as much as I do now. You know. In Hawaii we get a law of spirit, so it kind of comes a little bit naturally for some of us. You know what I mean? And it's to speak life. You know what I mean? And this is what this whole thing is thought about. It's about to speak life into others, to lift others up, to show others that recovery is possible. You know, and he says, what he has received is a free gift, and yet usually, at least in some small part of it, he has made himself ready to receive it. Right? Man, how did I make myself ready to receive it? You know, this gift of desperation, understanding that I'm totally powerless over alcohol, that my life has become unmanageable, right? I'm this unlovely creature. I'm this guy is unbearable with self. I can't even look in the mirror anymore. You know, and that 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 gift of desperation, that loneliness, that despair is actually the best thing that has ever happened to me, man. Because now, yeah, I get to give freely of what I found. I get to live a life beyond my wildest dreams, right? I get to show others that recovery is possible, right? That life can be different. Life can be different, right? So this is my actions, my attitudes, my thought life, my behaviors, um, my spirit, right? Am I filling my spiritual cup today? You know, am I showing others that there is a life right out there that can be that you don't have to do alone anymore, you know? So I have tapped into that source of inner strength. I've tapped into that unsuspected inner resource, you know? And I have been empowered, right? And like here in the Rooms of Alcoholics, and I haven't done this by myself. It's a we program, right? I need you more than you need me. You don't need me. I need you. I need the guy that comes to the meeting, right? Or a woman that comes to the meeting that is in his cups, right? That is in her cups because it reminds me of where I was, right? Of what has happened. That's why we tell them keep coming back. Or I tell them just stay, just stay. No need keep coming back. Just stay. You know. And Alcoholics Anonymous. I just go there and I like to say this, right? I've learned this. Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholic. A life centered on helping others lives in complete sobriety. Actions, not our names, right? It's not all me, not our names. You your maintenance of unity and service. You know, and that's what it all is, man. You know, one of my favorite movies that as a young kid, right, was Field of Dreams. I don't know if you guys remember that movie, right? In Field of Dreams. Yeah. But there was this guy, right? And he told the other guy, if you build it, he will come. If you build it, he will come. Today it becomes because of the runes of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? I've been transformed. I've been allowed to rebuild and recreate my life. And I'm so grateful. And I'm so overwhelmed and I'm so passionate about this program. And all I gotta do is give this thing away, man. I love you guys. God bless and aloha.